Jim, what have you got there? It's called
Shit in a jar.
Bowl Power Lunch Shake, and there's apparently a nutritionally complete meal. Just read out some of the ingredients for me if you want, mate.
Pea protein blend, water and pea protein, orange juice, carrots, coconut, dates, gluten-free oats, and vitamin complex.
Do we have a discount code for the viewers, or?
Yeah, it's use John Cordy at checkout.
Yep. How much can they get off?
You actually have to pay more.
Alright, I just tried the drink with you. What's it?
It's not pleasant. Big, feels like my teeth is covered in dirt.
Your tooth is covered in dirt. How's the neck? Right, so this episode of the John Cordy Show is brought to you by Bowl Drinks. Thanks for that ad read there, Jim. Anyway, so this is my less honest review of a Sire H7. So, if you're wondering why I'm doing a review on this, it's because they sent me one. The other two reviews that I did with the Larry Carlton S7 and the Les Paul version, the L7, I bought those guitars and I did reviews of those, and I was genuinely very impressed with those. And the reason that I did those reviews in the first place is because the Sire bass that you saw me playing in the intro was the bass that I chose to get when I was looking for a really good quality bass, but without spending crazy money. So the Sire Marcus Miller were things that I saw people, talking about and saying they're super high quality for the money. And so when I saw that Sire were making guitars, I thought, let's see if there's anything to this. So I first of all got the white kind of strap version. I was really impressed by that and really liked that guitar and thought it felt incredibly good quality for the money. And then I also bought the Les Paul version because I thought, let's see if it strikes twice the old lightning. That's a Larry Carlton pun for you, for the Larry Carlton fans. Anyway, just wanted to see, can they do that same thing? So again, that Les Paul I felt was a really, really good quality instrument for the money. I really liked the matte finish on the neck, and I really liked the upper fret access join. Nice additions to a Les Paul, and also the slightly slimmer body, and it wasn't super heavy like a sort of 8-pound Les Paul. Doesn't seem super heavy. So as someone who's not necessarily a huge Les Paul player, it's cool to have that piece of gear that I can go and grab. Moving forward in time, Sire were kind enough to send me this, and a few people were asking me to review the H7 way back when I did the others, and so this to me is the more kind of classic design out of all of them. So the strat shaped one is kind of more like a super strat, and the Les Paul one has some kind of liberties and adjustments made compared to like a normal Les Paul, whereas this, as far as I can tell, is basically very similar to what you might get in an ES335, whether you were going to get, a copy or an actual Gibson. I think in terms of construction and stuff, this is basically fairly faithful to that kind of thing. The other two guitars have locking tuners, whereas this just has your normal kind of die cast thing. And also this one has a glossy neck, which personally I think I would have preferred it was matte like the other two guitars. But this does feel comfortable. Comfortable neck, it's not thick, it's not too slim, it just feels about right. It's built as good as the other two, I would suggest. I think it looks pretty good. Weight wise, I think it's about 7.8 pounds-ish. And so, another really solid guitar for the money that Sire offer them for. Plays really well out of the box like the other two guitars did as well. So everything, as far as I can tell, was up to snuff with it. And a really good guitar for the money, I feel, and probably quite a good guitar for any amount of money. And I feel like these kind of three maybe are ideal choices. So I guess the question is, who are these guitars for? So for instance, someone like me, I'm not going to play an ES335 all the time, so I'm not going to be like the kind of person that's going to spend $2.5–3 grand on a real ES335. However, to have a guitar that can do the job of an ES335, plays really well, can do that job and looks the part, as well as, not making a huge dent in my bank account. I feel like this is what these guitars potentially might be for if you're like a a fairly serious player, but you know, you don't always use a Les Paul. The Sire H7 for me, as someone who's not always playing a Les Paul and not necessarily interested in having kind of 2-3 grand sunk into a Les Paul, the Sire works really well because it can do the Les Paul job, but I also don't have a massive hole burning in my pocket. And likewise, if you were someone that was thinking, I kind of dig like an Ibanez AZ or like a Super Strat kind of vibe, or a Sir, but honestly I'm more of a Les Paul or ES335 guy, I feel like the Sire S7, if you get a good one of those, might also do really well in that role. And again, like that for me is what the bass does. You know, I'm not a bassist all the time, but I needed a good solid bass for gigging. And so, you know, I'm not going to spend loads of money on it, but if I can get a good quality bass guitar that's going to actually sound really good as well, that was why I chose the Sire Marcus Miller, and I've gigged with that, you know, when I have to do bass for a gig. That for me is why I feel like the Sire guitars are not necessarily just meant for people that are looking for a cheap-ish guitar. Not quite like the level of a Squire or an Epiphone, but sort of a little bit more expensive than that, but still way less than £1,000 or dollars or whatever, and potentially can do that job. Feels really good to me as an instrument. Each of the ones that I've played have been really good, but I'd like you to comment below if you've had good or bad experiences with Sire guitars, and maybe that's a way that people can come to some conclusion about whether they like the instruments or not, or whether they're consistent. I think most of the people that I've talked to have had good experiences, and so that's kind of a good sign. Of course, there will be some people when you're dealing with any of these kind of guitars that might have come across quality control issues and this kind of stuff, but you can read that about kind of any company, I guess. So it's more just kind of trying to get a sense for the amount of numbers there. If you had a good experience, let people know in the comments, and if you didn't get one that you were actually happy with, also leave a comment and let me know in that way, or let others know that are reading the comments. I think that would be helpful for people. But for me, the three that I've played and own, I think are really, really solid guitars, and for the money I can't think of really anything that competes at this kind of price range. I think maybe for that reason they might be good options for like upgrades and stuff, you know. All of the pickups in each of these guitars seem to be voiced on the brighter side, which suits me quite nicely because I'm kind of going for those brighter tones rather than muddier tones. So they suit me quite well, but they might not suit everyone. But, you know, they're not expensive guitars, and, you know, you could upgrade quite easily and they might make a good candidate for that. For me, the quality is like a step ahead of maybe Squire or Epiphone or someone like that. And so that would be why I think maybe they'd be a good candidate for upgrading, because it's actually a really decent foundational instrument anyway, and seems to come out of the factory playing quite well, really well even. I don't know if Larry Carlton has actually been spotted playing these too much, but maybe he has. But whether he actually plays these versus his vintage instruments, I would sort of doubt a little bit. The Strat, for instance, is not really much like a vintage style Strat at all. 2-point trem, quite bright pickups with a humbucker in the bridge. So it's more of a Super Strat vibe. The Les Paul as well is voiced quite brightly, which is cool, and has that improved upper fret access, but I wouldn't say it's like a faithful replication necessarily of a classic Les Paul, but that's not a bad thing for me. The locking tuners are a nice thing on the other two guitars, and the matte finish neck I really love. And I'm not sure why this one doesn't have the matte neck, but it doesn't. So I don't know, maybe given time I might smooth that off a bit. But yeah, generally three really solid guitars and very impressed with each of them. So, you know, if you've got any questions, you can feel free to leave them in the comments. One other cool thing about the 335 was that you get a nice gig bag with it. So that comes with the 335. The others don't come with a case, but I think that's quite a nice gig bag for the money. So one other point of difference. I won't tell you that this is the best guitar that's ever been made, or that, you know, this is going to blow your Gibson out of the water or anything, but I feel like even for whatever level of guitar you're at, if you're a person like me who kind of gravitates towards a certain type of guitar, but it's useful to have these other kind of classic types of guitar around, but you don't want to sink all of your money into them, you know, like you say, you don't want a Gibson Les Paul or a 335 necessarily, because, you know, that's maybe £4 grand that you'd sink into two guitars that you don't play that often. I feel like these are kind of ideal candidates for that kind of person, as well as obviously for the more kind of beginner, intermediate styles. I think these guitars could perform a role for anyone, probably. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. So thank you to Sire for sending that one. Sorry it's no longer an unbiased review, but I did want to talk about it anyway and people were interested to know my thoughts. I think this one has got a treble bleed on it as well. I've removed the treble bleed from both the Les Paul and the Strat. I don't know whether I'll do that on this one or not, but time will tell. So thank you for stopping by. If you wanted to like and subscribe, you could. I'm using the Line 6 Pod Go for tones in this video, and you can get those presets for Helix or Pod Go or anything in the description if you want. And also the backing track will go on Patreon. But thank you for stopping by. I'll catch you in another video. Cheers.